Welcome to Queen Worm Farm. And Royals, today I'm going to show you what you can use for a worm bin. That's a question that I get a lot, is what do you raise those red wigglers in? Or I like to call them red wiggies. What do you raise them in? Do you just put them in a container? Do you put them in a garbage can? Do you get like one of those specialized worm composting units? What do you do? So I'm going to answer that, and then I'm going to answer that question on where should I be putting that worm bin. So should I be putting it in the kitchen? Should I just be putting it outside? Where? So those are the two questions I'm going to answer for you today. So the very first question that I'm going to address is what kind of worm bin? Okay, so there are lots of options. I'm going to show you a couple that I use, and then you know what? Think outside the box. Look around your house. Look what you can use, because this is not the only options out there. Just be creative. So Royals, right behind me is where I keep my breeder worms. And you see all of these tubs here, or containers, or bins, whatever terminology you want to use. I'm going to pull one out here and just bring it onto the table. As you can see here, this is quite a nice tub. It's got really good depth to it. Plus, it's made out of a heavy plastic that is not going to just be brittle or break in any way. I mean, there's a lot of dirt in here. It's easy to handle. It's about 2.5 feet by about 1.5 feet and about 5 inches in height. So it's a really nice size. Now, this is actually a concrete mixing tub. You can buy these tubs at a hardware store, such as Home Hardware, Home Depot, Rona, those kind of places. And they're not bad price. I think each one here was $7 or $8 Canadian. Not bad for the size that I would like to do my bins. And I just love them. These are what I use for my breeder worms. So if I remove my bag here, and I will go over coverings later, but if I remove it, you can see that I have my substrate in here, and my worms, I'm just going to disturb them a little bit, are right underneath. So they're happily breeding, and I don't want to really disturb this tub any more than that, because I just did a total maintenance on this a week ago, and they are breeding, and I really don't want to disturb them anymore. But this works just wonderful. And what I also like about these particularly is the way that I can grab and handle them. They're just really easy to maneuver. So I quite like these tubs. Now you can use any kind of Rubbermaids if you want. The other thing that I use is these buckets here. We have a ice cream place not that far from us, and they obviously buy this brand of ice cream, and they have lots of these containers left over, so I buy them for $2 a piece. So I just fill them with the substrate and the eggs actually hatch in here, and they grow to adults, and once they hit adult stage, these are the ones I feed out. So I have a whole bunch of these stacked up that are hatching and growing, and these ones here that are my breeder ones. So everything on the back of my wall there that you saw me pull this tub out are all breeders and will never get sold until they are too old and I replace them. Anything that's in these tubs and raised from eggs and hatching and growing, at the end of their cycle they are sold or fed out to my birds. So that's kind of what I do. I don't like anything bigger than this here. This here's 3-gallon container, or 11.4 liters. You don't want to get too tall because the soil will compress. You're better to go wider and shorter than skinny and too tall. Now the other thing that I like about these is that I can stack them really well on top of each other. I can stack about 10 high. So that's really nice. I do have holes in here, one on each side that we have made. So there is some air circulation at the top of these. But I do like that I can seal them, stack them, so it saves me space, and I could put a lot in a small space. So buckets, bins like this or something like this works great, or you can invest in a proper worm bin. They're a bit pricey, and if you are breeding them like I am, I wouldn't recommend that because you'll need so many of them, and that's not really geared to it. You want something where you can actually have your breeders and separate the eggs and stuff like that, and we'll go through that more. But think about the reason why you are raising these red wiggies. Am I raising them for my birds? Am I raising them just to get rid of my compost and turn that compost into castings? Am I raising them for castings and making beautiful dirt for my garden plants to start? What is the reason will change your design on how you have everything set up. So for me, I am raising them to feed my birds. I'm raising them for business to support the community here. I'm also raising them for their castings and to make beautiful seed starters. So I'm doing, the whole thing. And so, like I said, behind me are all these tubs here, and all of these here are breeders. They're all for breeding. And then these tubs right here, I know that the end result, these worms are going to get fed out. So Royals, if you are just using these red wiggies to eat some compost, get rid of that, the kitchen waste, and you want a little bit of, manure liquid, and you want a little bit of the liquid compost, then invest in a actual worm composting bin that has certain levels and stuff like that. That would be more up your alley than this setup. Because because you're not worried about breeding them, you're just worried about them eating your compost and making some awesome compost tea or using some of the castings. That would be perfect. So next thing is, now that you've established what you're using those red wiggies for, and you establish what kind of bin you probably should use, then comes to location. Now these red wiggies, let me tell you, they do not like being hot. Okay, so if you are in a really hot climate, you want to definitely store them in a basement or something like that, because they will not like the heat. They also do not like super cold. So for me in northern Alberta, Canada, I can't just stick them outside, because after, plus 15 Celsius, they're going, "Ooh, it's cold in the dirt." And they won't breed. They won't do what I need them to do. So what I find is 18 degrees Celsius to about 22 degrees Celsius is your optimum temperature range. It's not too cold, but it's not too hot. I would say anything over 25 degrees Celsius, way too hot. They will just completely slow down, or you're gonna cook them. Like, they just don't like it. If you think about earthworms where I live, when it gets super hot, the earthworms are burrowing deeper and deeper and deeper into the soil. They won't be at those levels where that sun is just scorching the soil, because they don't want to dry out. They don't like that heat. So they're going to get themselves deeper in the dirt. It's no different with these red wiggies. They do not like if the dirt heats up in composting. So if you have your hands in the dirt and you're like, "Oh, this is so roasty toasty," that's a death to your worms. So I am in my basement right now, and that's why it's not the prettiest down here. It's functional, but not, you know, the prettiest part of the house, but it stays at a constant temperature, whether it is winter or summer. And I apologize that you might have just heard the furnace kick on because I'm filming near to it, but the temperature here is between 18 and 20 degrees Celsius, which I'm in that perfect range for good breeding and good laying production and really good growth. So that is critical. Now, if you want to have something in your kitchen or one of those cool looking worm bins, just make sure that your kitchen does not go over that 25 degrees Celsius. If it does, you know, your food's gonna mold in there, you're gonna attract fruit flies more. It's just not a very good idea. So have it in the basement if you can. I would advise that hands down. Now, if you don't got a basement, figure out where the coolest area is of your house. Now, if you're closer to the equator, this might be a little bit hard to just go, hey, I'll just put it in my basement. Well, it just might not work. And these worms just might not be suited for you living in that area. You might not be able to control that temperature as good if you don't have a basement or somewhere cool for you to be. Now, it doesn't have to be a basement of the house. In Canada here, we don't, you know, go underground or dig a bigger pit. We just can't do that as much. So we have basements in our house, but different areas have cold storage, you know, dug into the ground. So if you are in a country or something like that where you can get underground a little bit, or an underground dwelling, and you can raise these worms there, no problem. So just think outside the box. Think about your location and think about the temperature. That's the key. You really want to keep between 18 to 22 degrees. It's critical. You can get away with 23, 24, but as much as possible, keep it between that 18 to 22 degrees Celsius for these worms. That would be perfect. They don't need sunlight. They don't need any sunlight. It can be dark, so you don't have to have the greatest lighting, but there is a critical thing about lighting, and that's another video, which is the next video after this. You will hear me talk about how important lighting is when you're doing maintenance with the worms. But you don't need the lighting for their general well-being or health. In that case, they would rather hide away in the dark. So I really hope that answers your questions, Royals, about what kind of bins you can use and where you should store these red wiggies. So, and remember, my Royals, subscribe to this channel, like this video, and definitely share. And I'll see you on the next video.